In a universe full of ideas, we draw lightness from the dark to a place where opposites attract. Right meets left, positive touches negative, sparking an explosion of truth. Because politics makes strange bedfellows.
I wanted to shift gears and talk about the here and the now, or recent events that have occurred with the Wagner Group revolt, and your thoughts on that, because you had a really interesting take on Wagner. I know you've interacted with those guys somewhat. And what are your thoughts on what Prigozhin did? What was he thinking?
Well, first of all, yes, I do have several friends that are in Wagner. And by several, I mean more than I can count on one hand. A couple of them are officers. They're guys that I fought with back in 2014 and 15. One of the things that makes Wagner such an excellent military unit is that they have a lot of veterans from the Donetsk People's Republic and Lugansk People's Republic, that have been, that have 8 years of experience in combat, and the people that can be in a war for 8 years and still be alive, you can pretty much take for advantage that they know what they're doing. And so I have multiple friends in Wagner right now. It's funny that, people, they say, oh, Prigozhin and Wagner and, oh, the mutiny, the revolt and la, la, la. But, Prigozhin and well, first of all, I'll say this. Prigozhin didn't make the call to go to Rostov. He said it was a council of commanders. He asked, because he's a very courageous dude. He spent a lot of time on the very front in Bakhmut with his men, but he's not really a combat commander. He's more like, the economic and political leader of Wagner. Right. The ideological leader, Mm-hmm. And so his combat commanders, he asked them, what to do when Shoigu gave the ultimatum about everybody had to sign a contract with the MOD by the end of June.
Right.
And as he said, and I believe, his commanders are the ones who said, we're not going to stand for this. We're not signing it. And we're not, just going to disband and let dissolve all the work that we've done over all these years. And so, so that's the first point. It wasn't Prigozhin that made that decision. It was the combat commanders, pretty much, who all of them, are heroes of Russia. They have the Gold Star, they're, the best military commanders in the whole Russian military without question, proven by their accomplishments. And then what they did, the FSB, which is like the Russian FBI, they investigated Wagner. They investigated Prigozhin personally. And they said we've opened a specific case on the charge of treason. And the next day, like the 26th of June, they said, no, we closed the case. There's no evidence of treason. That's against Prigozhin and Wagner. You think Alexander Lukashenko, one of the certainly smartest and adept at self-preservation head of state in the world today, he invites, Prigozhin and Wagner into Belarus. And Lukashenko has had several attempts at color revolutions against him in Belarus already. and they were pretty serious, pretty dangerous attacks, which he overcame. But if there was any question about the loyalty of Prigozhin and the soldiers of Wagner, you know, Lukashenko, that's the last thing he would need, would be for, you know, some questionable military unit to come in. And so by Lukashenko inviting them into Belarus, that shows that he is literally trusting Wagner and Prigozhin with his life, And it doesn't get, you know, I mean, it's like mountain climbing, and who's going to hold the rope while you're, you know, over the 500-foot cliff? You know, I mean, you're trusting somebody with your life. That's as real as trust can get. On the other hand, Vladimir Putin has said that, you know, betrayal is the worst crime of all. And I agree with that. But if Putin thought that Prigozhin had betrayed him, had like tried to attack him as the president of Russia or overthrow the Russian government or the Russian constitution, you know, Putin would never have let Prigozhin get away. He would have said, no, I don't care if you go to Belarus. I don't care if you go to the United States. We're going to get you. We're going to get you.
Right. Yeah, that's the question I have now, is that we find out from Lukashenko this week that actually Prigozhin is not in Belarus. He's apparently in St. Petersburg, Russia. So
well, that's where he's from. I mean, he's taking care of his business. He is not. He's got, you know, the FSB searched his house. They took some guns from his house. They took about $250 million worth of rubles.
And I saw some fat stacks of cash in United States dollars, too.
That's right. I mean, that was a big chunk of money, but
it was interesting.
I mean, he's got a lot of work to do. You know, money's a tool. And so he had a lot of that tool. But he's got it all back. He got it all back. He got all the guns back. He got all the money back. You know, I mean, so there's no charges against him or Wagner. And he's basically free to do whatever he wants. I mean, he's walking around St. Petersburg. He's walking around Rostov. He's walking wherever he needs to go, and nobody's messing with him, because it would be stupid. It would be inexcusably idiotic for Russia to disband, you know, the most effective military unit, you know, in the 21st century. You know, I mean, so they have a powerful thing there. Lukashenko is going to take care of it, I believe. And who knows, really, nobody knows for sure what's going to happen. But I believe that Wagner will make the transition to Belarus. They will become trainers. They will also remain a cohesive military unit. And they will, you know, and they will be 100 kilometers from Kiev instead of 300 kilometers now. And if they're needed to go in, well, when they're needed to go in, they go in. That's what they do. I mean, what they did in Bakhmut or Artemyevsk, it was a legendary military victory for the ages. I mean, you know, there's basic, you know, there's a how do you say it? There's a course of study called military science. And there are laws in military science, just like there are laws in physics, just like the law of gravity, just like the sun comes up in the morning. And, you know, one of those laws of military science is that when you are assaulting an entrenched defensive force, particularly in a built-up urban area like Bakhmut, that you need 3 times as many attackers as there are defenders in order to have some, you know, reasonable expectation of success. And the less it is than 3 times as many, you know, scientifically, the less you can expect to have success for the assault. Wagner went into Bakhmut not with 3 times as many, not with twice as many, not even 1-to-1. Wagner went into Bakhmut with less than 1-to-1 parity with the Ukrainian Nazis that were dug in there, and they beat them. You know, Prigozhin says it was 20,000 men that he lost. It would have been less, supposedly, if he'd had the ammo and the equipment that he needed that he didn't get. But to take a city like Bakhmut with less than 1-to-1, I mean that's literally, you know, the Alamo or Thermopylae with the 300 Spartans, except they won. It's like the Alamo fighting against 3,000 Mexican soldiers and winning.
Right.
You know, so you know it's a miracle of courage, dedication, determination, and they did it. There's no finer fighting for it. And you know, and the most important thing, and it doesn't matter, you know, if you have, you know, a Stinger missile or if you have a knife. The guy that's the most determined, the guy that's not going to ever, you know, that's going to fight down till, you know, scratching with fingernails. Those are the guys that are going to win. Morale, esprit de corps, that's the most important consideration in any battle. And that's how Wagner won in Bakhmut. They, you know, they had courage, they had determination, they had the willingness to give their lives to win. And they did win. And they got stabbed in the back for doing it, you know. I mean, there's a lot of questions about what's happened with Wagner, between Wagner and Prigozhin and Shoigu, you know, since back in the days of Syria. You know, the original fight there, Deir ez-Zor, 2018. Prigozhin told about he came out publicly at the beginning of June with the story about Deir ez-Zor, where 200 Wagner soldiers were ambushed by American air power and massacred, basically. One of my friends was there. He was one of the very, very few people that survived that attack. He was there as a soldier in Wagner in Syria and Deir ez-Zor. And Prigozhin said that before they went on this mission to the Conoco refinery outside of Deir ez-Zor, Syria, that they were ordered to take by the Ministry of Defense, the Russian Ministry of Defense. And the Ministry of Defense told them that, yes, we're going to give you air cover. We're going to, you know, turn on the air defense artillery, you know, the S-300s or S-200s, whatever they had there. And, you know, and we're going to put helicopters and fighters in the air. And if any kind of aircraft come to attack you, we're going to protect you. And then as soon as these guys, it was, you know, like a long, you know, 10-kilometer, 20-kilometer march or something. They left in the evening, 6 p.m., something like that. They didn't arrive to their target until midnight, something like that. And as soon as they left, the Ministry of Defense called back and they said, don't put the aircraft in the air. Don't turn on the air defense. And don't tell Wagner that we didn't do it. And so, and I don't know if this is true or not. I know it's true that Prigozhin reported on this in early June. But I also know it's true that in Russia, there's a law against discrediting the Russian military by making false statements that make the Russian military look bad. So, exactly. I mean, there's people in jail in Russia who said something like, say, oh, yeah, the Russian army killed all those civilians in Bucha, which is a complete lie. And they wrote it, they publicized it, and they got put in jail for it, as they should, because it's a lie, a provable false lie. So Prigozhin says this about Shoigu. And he went on to say that like a couple of months later, he met Shoigu at some big fancy function in Moscow, and he tried to ask him about it. And Shoigu basically told him, you know, tough darts, little ranger. And so if Prigozhin said it, which he did, then it's either true or it's either a lie. And if it's a lie, then he should be, and, you know, no one will argue, he should be arrested for that, for telling a lie, that Shoigu betrayed and stabbed in the back his men, you know, did something that led to the death of scores, if not hundreds, of Russian volunteers. And so if he said it and it was not true, he should have been arrested for it the next day. And he wasn't.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.